The evening shift had always been quiet for Layla, a 28-year-old waitress working at Daisy's Diner, a small, cozy spot nestled in a quiet part of town. Most of the patrons were regulars, retired locals who came in to enjoy their coffee and catch up with each other, reminiscing about the good old days. For Layla, it was a peaceful escape, a slow-paced environment with little surprises. But tonight, that familiar rhythm was broken. Just before closing time, the bell above the door chimed, and in walked someone Layla never expected to see in a place like Daisy's. She froze for a moment, her eyes widening as she recognized him. It was Elon Musk, one of the world's most talked-about figures, walking casually into the diner as if he were just another customer. His presence commanded attention. Even the regulars glanced over their shoulders, some whispering among themselves. Layla's heart raced. She had seen Elon countless times on TV, in interviews and on social media, but now here he was, looking a bit tired, yet still carrying that air of confidence. He took a seat at a small booth near the window, looking outside, deep in thought. Gathering her composure, Layla took a deep breath and approached his table. She put on her warmest smile and asked, "Hi there, what can I get for you tonight?" "Just a coffee, please," he said. "Black, and maybe a slice of whatever pie you have." "Coming right up," Layla said, trying to sound casual. She moved back to the counter, feeling the eyes of the other customers on her. Some of the regulars were already muttering, a few of them looking somewhat irritated, though Layla didn't quite understand why. Pouring his coffee and plating a slice of cherry pie, she reminded herself that he was just a customer. She wanted to give him the same friendly service she gave anyone else, even if he was, well, Elon Musk. Returning to his table, she set down his order. "Thank you," he said, taking a sip and glancing out the window again. He seemed preoccupied, perhaps thinking over something from his earlier meeting, Layla guessed. He'd had a long day, and somehow she felt a bit of sick sympathy for him. Shot or not, everyone needed a quiet place to unwind. Layla went back behind the counter, keeping herself busy while casting the occasional glance at Elon. She felt a mix of curiosity and admiration. He was an ambitious figure, always reaching for the impossible, but it seemed not everyone in the diner shared her thoughts. Eventually, one of the older men, a regular named Hank, known for his unfiltered opinions, stood up and walked over to Elon's table. Layla watched nervously, unsure of what he was about to say. "Excuse me," Hank said, his voice gruff but loud enough to catch everyone's attention. "Aren't you the guy who used to support OpenAI? Helped set it up, didn't you?" Elon looked up, pausing mid-sip. "Yes, I was involved in the early days," he replied calmly. Hank crossed his arms, a skeptical look crossing his face. "So why do you sue them now? From what I hear, you're making your own AI thing just like them. Isn't that a bit contradictory?" Elon sighed, setting his coffee cup down. "I have concerns about the direction OpenAI is heading. I believe AI should be aligned with truth and not biased by hidden motives. That's why I started XAI. I wanted to build something transparent, something more focused on facts." "Sure," Hank scoffed. "You're just looking out for yourself. What, you didn't get the control you wanted, so now you're making your own AI? More money, more power, isn't that it?" A few murmurs of agreement rose from the other tables. Elon's expression didn't change, but Layla noticed a slight tension in his posture. It was a different side of him, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. He was no stranger to criticism, she figured. He was used to it, maybe even expected it, but something about hearing it in this small, intimate space seemed to hit differently. "Actually, no, it's not about power or profit," Musk replied, his tone measured. "It's about accountability. AI is one of the most powerful tools we have. I don't want to look back and see that I didn't do everything I could to keep it in check." Layla watched the exchange, feeling a pang of unease. She'd been thrilled to serve someone as famous as Elon, and yet the others seemed almost hostile. Whispers spread. A few people shaking their heads, some of them clearly didn't believe him, seeing his actions as self-serving. Layla's heart felt heavy as she stood behind the counter, listening to people criticize Elon Musk with increasing hostility. The way they looked at him, the accusations thrown, it didn't sit right with her. She'd seen Elon as a symbol of progress, someone who didn't just talk about change, but actively worked to make it happen. And yes, he was controversial, but what visionary wasn't? Finally, she couldn't hold back anymore. She walked over to Hank's table, clearing her throat as she spoke up, her voice steady, but her nerves running wild. "Look, I know not everyone agrees with what he's doing, but you can't just dismiss him as selfish," Layla said, glancing around at the regulars who were now watching her intently. "This is a guy who's not only invested in space and tech, but also has a foundation that supports hospitals and sick kids. I've read about it, and when it comes to AI, well, technology moves forward whether we like it or not. The fact that he's trying to make something safer, more transparent, that's worth something, don't you think?" Her words seemed to catch Elon's attention. He looked at her, a glimmer of surprise and perhaps even appreciation in his eyes. She realized he hadn't expected anyone to stand up for him, especially not a waitress in a small, unassuming diner like this. Layla continued, gaining momentum. "Just because he's trying to improve on something that already exists doesn't mean he's only in it for the money. I mean, isn't that what innovation is about? Finding ways to make things better?" The room went silent for a moment. Some people seemed taken aback, while others still wore skeptical expressions. Layla had known these folks for years, served them their coffee and pie, laughed at their jokes, and listened to their stories. But tonight, it felt like she was suddenly an outsider. Then her boss, Mr. Jones, walked in from the back, frowning as he saw the scene unfolding. He looked from Layla to the other customers, his expression growing more serious. "Layla, what's going on here?" he asked, his tone clipped. She hesitated, swallowing hard. "I was just defending Mr. Musk," she said, her voice softer now but still, carrying a hint of defiance. Mr. Jones's frown deepened. He glanced around at the regulars, some of whom were nodding in disapproval, and shook his head. "Layla, I appreciate your passion, but our regulars are the backbone of this place. We can't have you arguing with them over any customer, celebrity or not." "But Mr. Jones, I wasn't arguing, I was just—" He held up a hand, cutting her off. "I've made up my mind. I think it's best if we find someone else to take your place. You can stay on for a few more days until I find a replacement. But after that—" Layla's heart sank. The diner had been her safe place, her little sanctuary, where she knew the regulars and the rhythm of each day. She hadn't expected this to end up costing her job. Around her, a few customers chuckled, clearly entertained by the drama unfolding. She felt a sting of humiliation, her eyes welling up despite herself. She'd only been trying to defend someone she thought deserved a fair chance, but it had backfired in the worst way possible. Now her remaining days at the diner would be filled with awkward glances, whispers, and the bitter taste of rejection. Elon, who had been listening quietly, stood up. He looked at Layla with a mix of gratitude and regret, sensing the trouble his presence had caused. "Thank you for standing up for me, Layla," he said, his voice gentle. "But I don't want to be the reason you lose your job. I'll head out now." Layla looked up at him, blinking back tears. She didn't know what to say, but at that moment she was grateful he understood. She gave him a small nod, her heart aching as he turned to leave. Musk walked out of Daisy's diner, the bell above the door chiming once more as it closed behind him. The silence that followed was deafening, and Layla felt every set of eyes on her, the weight of their disapproval pressing down on her shoulders. This black waitress was fired for helping Elon Musk, but the next day she got the shock of her life. When she came to work the next day, Layla's heart wasn't in it. She walked into Daisy's diner feeling defeated, her eyes heavy from a restless night. The thought of having to find a new job weighed on her, but even more, she dreaded the knowing look she'd get from the regulars. Yesterday's incident still lingered fresh in her mind, being fired for standing up for someone she admired. It felt unfair, but here she was, trying to get through the day. As the lunch rush started to fade, the doorbell chimed. Layla barely glanced up from the coffee machine until she heard an excited whispering. She turned, her stomach flipping, when she saw Elon Musk standing in the doorway, a slight smile on his face. He scanned the room, gave a light nod to the curious onlookers, and then took the same table by the window he'd occupied the previous evening. The diner went silent, everyone watching. Mr. Jones, the diner owner, was there too, hovering nervously by the counter. Some of the regulars from the previous night glanced between Elon and Layla with thinly veiled curiosity, clearly wondering what Elon was doing back in their little diner. Layla tried to keep her composure, but her hand shook slightly as she brought over his coffee and a slice of cherry pie. She managed a polite smile as she set down the items but didn't linger. She wasn't sure why he was here again, but she didn't want to make any more waves. She busied herself with other tables, half expecting him to leave as quietly as he had the night before. But Elon stayed, drinking his coffee, occasionally glancing in her direction. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he looked up and caught her eye, gesturing for her to bring him the bill. Layla took a steadying breath, grabbing the card machine as she approached his table. As she reached him, she mustered her best professional smile, sliding his card into the machine. "Thanks for coming in again," she said quietly, still feeling self-conscious about yesterday. She felt everyone's eyes on her, watching intently, clearly curious about what would happen next. Elon met her gaze, his expression softening. "Layla, I just want to say thank you for standing up for me last night," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I know it cost you, and not everyone would have done that." Layla looked down, a small smile creeping onto her face. "I just said what I believed," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I don't think anyone deserves to be judged by one side of the story." Elon nodded thoughtfully, then leaned forward, glancing around as if to make sure he had her attention. "You know, after I left here last night, I couldn't stop thinking about what you did. So I checked in with my team, and we'd love to have someone with your kind of heart and integrity on board." Layla felt her stomach twist with surprise, her hands freezing on the card machine. "What do you mean?" she asked, barely able to believe what she was hearing. Elon gave her an encouraging smile. "We have a foundation, and we're always in need of people who genuinely care and are good with others. If you're interested, we could use someone like you at the call center. It wouldn't be glamorous, but it'd be steady work. And who knows, it might even be the start of something bigger." Layla blinked, barely able to process his words. Her heart raced as she realized that he was offering her a job, an actual job, one that could take her in a new direction. She looked at him, trying to see if he was serious, but all she saw in his expression was sincerity. Layla swallowed, finally, finding her voice. I don't know what to say," she stammered, a smile breaking through the shock. Elon chuckled softly. "Just say yes, and we'll figure out the rest later." Without thinking, she nodded. Yes, I'd love to," she managed, her voice brimming with emotion. The regulars exchanged glances, some of them looking sheepish, while others simply watched in stunned silence. Layla couldn't help but smile as she handed Elon the card machine. To finalize the payment, he entered his PIN and handed her a receipt, but she knew this was no ordinary transaction. As Elon got up to leave, he gave her a final nod. "See you soon, Layla. My team will be in touch." And with that, he walked out of Daisy's diner, leaving behind a stunned silence and a very grateful waitress. Layla stood there, her heart pounding, as she realized that in defending someone she believed in, she hadn't just stood up for him. She'd opened the door to an unexpected, life-changing opportunity. What do you think motivated Layla to defend Elon Musk in the diner, even though it cost her job? Do you think her actions were purely out of admiration, or was there something deeper? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video.